ICD-11. If you think Orphanet for rare diseases, if you think the cancer codes, ICD-0, and we are working very actively with other terminology and classification providers, for example, with MEDRA and for the medicaments, and also with LOINC, including even SNOMED, to explore and work on these kind of linkages and mappings. And here you see a very important resource, which basically gives guidance on how to go about the development now of maps when this is coming into play, and what kind of aspects one has to be considering there. Now, just to summarize, what is important here to highlight is really the value proposition of these tools. So overall, they should be easy to use and will save on training, coding time, and of course, investment into external coding software. They have natural language processing capacity. You can expand the list of synonyms in the foundation, or you can also expand, the possibilities of using code combination through this post-coordination mechanism. So in principle, everything can be post-coordinated, but of course, we give, the guidance and enable this for very frequently unknown code combinations, but in principle, this is can be expanded. We have, in terms of software, the deployment capacity for online as well as offline, so that it's easy integratable. The ICD, of course, like the other classifications, are going to be always scientifically up to date from an epidemiological, clinical, and research perspective. And for that, we have a proposal mechanism which is also in place to assure this. We have the integration of the terminology into this, and then bringing in other, of course, domains of health, like, for example, the integration of medicaments, devices, and other things which I mentioned earlier. And of course, the idea was also important to have incorporated the detail from clinical modifications into this international version. And with that in mind, we also anticipate that, and that is something which, of course, countries have to really look at, the need for having a continuation of these kind of clinical modifications from a country perspective will not be there anymore as it has been there in the past. So many of these tools are multilingual, and so they, which is very important. We know that they have cross-cultural applicability. We have an online maintenance and shared maintenance process, which is open, which is transparent. Very important that all these tools are, of course, international public goods, so they are free in terms of usage, fully accessible with full functionality, unlike some of the other terminologies which you find out there, which are of proprietary nature. And if they are free, then they will have limited functionality. And these tools will be enhanced collectively and developed further. And just to give you a flavor of something which we are currently working on, there are many others, is a new tool which is currently in the, let's say, prototype development. We called it Code Fusion, to enable basically automated and batch processing for automated coding. So if a country, and we have seen this in a number of countries where implementation is ongoing, has, for example, a catalog of diagnostic categories or even interventions categories, like for ICHI. So it's not only, this tool will not only work for ICD-11, but also, for example, for the interventions classification. And you want to code this in an automated way. This tool is allowing you to do this. So as I said, it's a command line tool. We are working on it, and it will be launched later this year. And it will, of course, ease also the work in terms of processing specific codes and terms automatically using the respective classification. So just to end with, of course, what is very important, as Tracy already mentioned, is now having these tools is the first step in terms of the implementation. But of course, from an implementation perspective, the next step is now to embed this into the ecosystem of the technologies, of the data workflows we have in the country. And here, just to give you a flavor of what this would entail, we had recently a face-to-face workshop with a number of countries in the Sero region. And what we did there is really to deep dive into this mapping of the data workflow for mortality as is and how it should be, as well as for morbidity, where you see at the bottom layer the different tools, some of which I mentioned and you will now also be presented, demonstrated to, and which kind of technology platform in the country is used to host these tools. And then, of course, what are the different workflows which need to be considered on how to make optimal use of this and how they fit into this workflow. That needs to be specified as much as possible to really make best possible use of these tools. And that is something which, as part of the, let's say, implementation planning, and as we move further ahead, country by country, we will be happy to assist in this kind of mapping process and then implementation process. And you see here, for example, what the Maldives are envisaging in terms of their how this looks like for their mortality workflow, leveraging the tools below, and the same here for the morbidity data and how this fits into the electronic medical record system, or even for some countries, of course, this was done keeping a paper-based system in mind. So irregardless of what the technology, technology can be fully electronic, it can be fully paper-based, or it can be hybrid, but it needs to be specified, like you see here in this flowchart. So with that, I end, and I'm handing back to Tracy, and later on, I'm happy to address any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that overview, Nina. So to start us off, I'll turn it over to Philippa Pretty, who is from AIHW, the Metadata Information Management and Classification Unit, who will be showing us several tools. So first, the ICD-11 browser, the coding tool, and also ICD Fit, so the ICD field implementation tool. So over to you, Philippa.
Thanks, Tracy. Just share my screen. Okay. Oops, wrong slide, sorry. My apologies, I got the wrong slide deck up. Where am I? Okay. Now we're in the right one. Okay, so as Tracy just mentioned, I will be walking you through several of the ICD-11 tools. My first presentation is around the ICD-11 Foundation, as well as the MMS browser and coding tool. So firstly, we'll start with the Foundation. So the ICD maintenance process allows for the updating of the ICD following the evolution in the understanding of diseases, treatment and prevention. So there has been a standardized process been established to ensure that the proposed updates are collected, routed, reviewed and duly considered before being implemented. So I have provided links to the foundation and maintenance platform at the end of this presentation, and the presentation I think will be shared. So, and Brooke will be discussing the proposal platform in a lot more detail in a moment. So here we can see the foundation platform. So this is the home of all three classifications. To lodge a proposal, you need to create a login. So you can see these are circled on the screen. So the foundation is the home of, as I said, all three reference classifications. It does include all of the entities, whether they're codable within a linearization or not. So, whoops. So all entities in the foundation have a unique identifier. So this is called a unique resource identifier, or commonly known as a URI. So this is their foundation identity. So as you can see, the example on the screen of the hereditary megaloblastic anemia has its own unique identifier circled. So from the left-hand column, you can see where it sits within the actual classification. So where the little blue arrow is. As you can see, it is a child of hereditary, it's kind of hard to read, but hereditary B12 deficiency anemia. And each entity is mapped to a code within a tabular list. So whether it be a codable entity within a tabular list or an index term to a codable entity. Oops. So here is another view of the same entity. So you can see within the tabular list where it lives. So it's still living within the same parent, the hereditary vitamin B12 deficiency anemia. However, the entity that we were looking at, the hereditary megaloblastic anemia, is an index term. So as you can see, it's not above the shoreline, which is the difference between something in the foundation being codable within the linearization or not. So, and that's what the little symbol circle shows you, that it is a foundation entity only. So tabular lists are a subset of the ICD-11 foundation. So the tabular list we'll talk about today is for mortality and morbidity statistics. So this is drawn up from the ICD-11 foundation. So the MMS is released annually in a fixed state, and this is what we call a frozen version. So the MMS itself has two digital tools, an online browser and a coding tool, and we will be looking at both of these today. Oops, wrong way. So this is the frozen version browser. You can see on the top line which version you are viewing. So this version is the January 2023 edition. It's also currently available in several languages, which is indicated on the top right in the circle where it says EN. So this is the English version, but it's also available in Arabic, Spanish, French, Russian, Turkish, and Chinese. From this screen, you could also access the coding tool and reference guide. So the coding tool has its individual tab, and the reference guide you would access via the info button. So the coding tool does use natural language with searchable index terms, including synonyms and eponyms, as well as some abbreviations.
Philippa, sorry to interrupt. Would you be able to share your screen full size, not in the presenter mode? I think some of the participants are having issue reading. Yes.
Better?
That's much better. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I thought it was presenting fully to you guys and presenter mode for me. Okay, so this is our coding tool. So as you can see, there are three ways of searching. So this is the first one, which is a simple search. So simply just typing in a concept into the search bar. So in the browser, we also have an advanced search button, which is, you click into this advanced search little line, and it lets you search for the terms you want, but you can search specifically on synonyms, descriptions, inclusions, or exclusions. And then, of course, you can also tabular browse. Tabular browsing isn't really recommended when you're coding. However, if you're looking to see where something is within the hierarchy, it's one way to find things. So the starting point for actual coding is using the coding tool. So, for example, for this one, we have entered the term for diabetes. So, and as you can see, the system does pick up abbreviations. So I've typed in DM1, meaning diabetes mellitus type 1. And the coding tool will come and find possible entities. So, and that can be sorted by matching score. This also drops down to classification order. So you can see that type 1 diabetes is in this list. Now, if you weren't quite getting what you wanted to find, you could also use this word list on the left-hand side to start driving some extra keywords in search mechanisms. And you can also turn on this filter. So the chapter distribution. So again, you could be very specific on if you only wanted to search the endocrine chapter. Using this filter, you can also turn on your extension codes, as well as activating the chapter V for functioning and traditional medicine. So I'll just go back one thing. So once you've got your entity of what you want, you can click on this little button called details. You can see with the plus, that this indicates the fact that there is post-coordination available. And the little J and K indicate the fact that there is an obstetric link for this condition. And there's also a perinatal, which is the K. So when you clicked into more detail, so this is the box you would see. So this is one way of verifying that you are looking at the right condition. So you can see the code description, you can see the exclusions, you can see the coded elsewhere. So we have the maternal chapter and we have the perinatal chapter. Remember those little J's and K's that are on the previous screen. And then you can click and see in hierarchy, or you can click on the plus for post-coordination. By doing this, this launches the browser. So you can come through and then you can see all the post-coordination options. So in this one, I've selected the chronic kidney disease stage 3A as the manifestation. And as you can see, the browser and the coding tool start building a cluster for you. So you would then click on select, and assuming your API is engaged, then you will that will go into your coding system. So that was a brief touch on the coding tool and the browser. These are the links that I was talking about, so they'll all be active and shared to you after this session. And I'll hold for questions when we finish after everyone else has spoken. So I will now jump to the ICD Fit. And there we go. So ICD Fit. So the ICD Fit, as Ninad spoke about before, is part of the training and capacity building. It has interfaces for various actions, being line coding, main condition coding, patient safety, cause of death, which is in development still, and ICHI for interventions. So the name itself, FIT, actually is the abbreviation of field trials. So the FI from field, T for trials, and this is where ICD Fit originated from in the first instance. So within ICD Fit, we will look today at how a person will interact with ICD Fit when they're doing coding exercises, be it for education or for a field trial, depending on what capacity you're using it for. I'll also go through the data reports and analysis that once coding exercises are done, the data that as a collaborating centre, you can actually generate and use for either education or for accuracy and compliance. So when we're using ICD Fit for field trials or education, an individual centre will be set up by WHO in ICD Fit. So as you can see on the screen, there are several that I am members of. So we had one for EIC. So we've actually been using ICD Fit as part of the testing of the WHO Academy modules and been using the examples running through ICD Fit, which has been great to coordinate internationally the review via EIC. As you can see, there is an Australian centre and there is a demonstration centre which is based around morbidity training primarily. So once the centre has been set up, the modules will be loaded or assigned to the centre. So as you can see, EIC we actually had 8 modules, but 6 are on the screen. And as you can see, as a user, you can actually see your progress. So when this screenshot was taken, I'd done 100% of module 5, and I'd only done 6% of module 6. So each individual can actually see their own progress. As you go, you can go through and go into each individual module as a user. As you can see, it tells you your centre, your module number, how many cases are here. And then you would be clicking on the little blue links on the side to go into each case. So you can see I've completed 3. Then by clicking into case number 4, you can see the case content. This was a line coding exercise. And then we'll then click on Start ICD-11 Coding. So once you do that, this is the form that you start using. So you would, above this line, not quite in the screenshot, is still the the content for this exercise. So the non-union of the radial fracture. So you would start coding in here. So once you've started entering terms here, you start getting into the browser or the coding tool. So I typed in the non-union radius, so you didn't even need to put in the entire clinical term. And as you see, it's very natural language. I don't have to say fracture non-union radius, which would have been the index pathway if I was using a paper index. So as you see, the coding tool will give me my destination entities. We've got some post coordination, so I would click on the plus. And that would open up all the options I have post coordination. If you didn't know them, as you can see, they are use additional if desired. If you're happy with the code you've got or the cluster, you would then click select. And then on this bottom screen grab, you can see how it's come back into ICD Fit into that ICD-11 code field. Now, going back through in ICD Fit, so that we're still in the exercise, I've just scrolled down the screen. So the code will actually just be up the top, sort of under this banner at the moment. We can then go through, and the questions that are in here were very specific to the EIC activity. So we were here to be assessing things for the academy material. So if you were doing a field trial, you'd have different questions. Generally, you always have how difficult do you rate this? And the topics listed in here may be different based around what your collaborating centre needs. And there'll always be comments. And often the feedback in here was, I didn't know how to find X, Y, Z. You would then click on next and whoops. And that would take you back to, so it would either take you into the next exercise, or you can actually use the back arrow and go back and see where you are within the module. And you can keep using back arrows to get back out to the whole list of modules or right back to the start of ICD Fit. So as you can see by the previous slides, you can come and go from ICD Fit. Like you don't have to sit down, for example, and do those 34 cases at once. It does track your progress. And as a manager of that, you can actually see the progress as well via the statistical reporting modules. I can see there are some things in chat. I'll get to that when I've finished this next second half. So as a manager, or a coordinator at a collaborating center, you will have access to data reports and analysis, and the 3 reports are ranking, report, and raw data. So the ranking literally is the compliance with the gold standard answer in ICD-FIT against the each of the individual users. I did actually blank out the users' names and email addresses for this. It does identify you absolutely individually. However, I thought for the sake of privacy, I would remove that for this presentation. So, however, within your collaborating center, you could use that. And so, for example, you might consider the person who had the 69% compliance that maybe looking at their feedback to find out why. So the report shows us the again, overall case by case of the percentage compliance. So as you can see with this one, case 17, 18, 21, and 27 had 0% compliance. So this means the people, the 18 or 17 people that attempted it didn't actually match the gold standard answer. So, and it's using this report that you start building your education materials and going through and figuring out why. And one of the processes we did for EIC was really looking at why. Is it something that needs post-coordination, but the tooling doesn't support at the moment? Is it something that we need to highlight through our education materials in the academy, and various other reasons? So as you can see within this module, so this, you can see this is module 5. So there's quite a fair amount that has 100% compliance, and then some at 95, and then we shrink down. So these are reasonably happy with. These are the ones that we'd really be wanting to do a deep dive analysis of. So by doing that, we can go into our raw data and see absolutely everything. There is actually columns in here about who the coder was, but I have, again, removed them for privacy purposes. And you can sort this, even look at the whole unit as a whole, or sort it by case number. So for example, case 17 was the top of that report, which had 0 compliance. So here we can actually see the absolute raw data of the code, what the gold standard was, and all the codes assigned. And then we started doing assessment around why wasn't the post coordination done, for example? Did they find it easy? Did they find it difficult? The sample, so we had 46 people doing this analysis, this task, and that's across a lot of English and non-English first language. So we also looked at that against the people. Is it something that perhaps needs some work with translation as well? And you can see the raw data answers all the questions that they were asked in those little dot boxes, is also right across the spreadsheet. So ICD-FIT, it is very easy to use as a user, as a coder, to be doing the exercises, but also as a manager. The reports you get, you can have like a very high level report, which is, sometimes all management want to see, but to actually get down, you can actually drill right down into that raw data and really have some very interesting analysis. And that's the end of me.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Philippa. So just to mention, we have a training center set up for the Pacific, and also we could set up country-specific one as well. And I will turn it over to Nina. I think he has some comments.
Yeah, exactly. Just to pick up on the last point. So to be clear, the ICD-FIT platform is a platform for countries by countries. So if we have currently 60 countries or so on the platform, so it's not only for collaborating centers, but really for countries who want to start this process of training their coding workforce with ICD-11. In addition to what Philippa already mentioned, I would highlight 3 more things. One is that for each individual coder who is doing the exercise, after completing the term set, he or she can go to a dashboard and gets the performance score calculated. So there is a performance score. These were the percentage figures which Philippa showed in the overview. But so each coder gets an immediate feedback on his or her performance vis-a-vis coding accuracy measured against the gold standard. And in the user interface, you can also then see, if you're on the platform, how much you deviate from the gold standard. So that is also important. You see how your peers coded and what kind of, let's say, patterns of variations you find there. The second point is that we have on the platform different modules or user interfaces. So what Philippa showed you were those which are used for what is called line coding. So you have a diagnostic statement in one line and you code it. There's another module or interface we are using for main condition coding, which has two lines, main condition and other condition. So for morbidity, we have one for patient safety, and we are working also on one for cause of death coding, where we are mirroring basically the cause of death form. And in future, there's also one for traditional medicine, for double coding, Western medicine and traditional medicine diagnosis. So in a way, it really is responding to the needs at country level and on the ground in terms of what should be put up there vis-a-vis the interface. And on that point, also, if you have your own term sets, which you would like to upload and use as part of the training exercise, this can be also done. In fact, a number of countries came up with their own term sets, whether it's for line coding or for main condition coding, and we upload them after establishing the center, and that is used as, of course, they need to be, we have an indication of what the gold standard is, so that the coders can immediately get that feedback. That needs to be done, but the term plus the gold standard can be uploaded, and that is done for many countries. So these are the additional points I just wanted to highlight. So back to you, Tracy.
Thank you for that, Nina. So on to the next tool that we'll showcase. I'll turn it over to Brooke McPherson, who will be presenting on the ICD-11 proposal platform. So over to you, Brooke.
Thank you, Tracy. Bear with me while I... Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Brooke McPherson, and I'm a Senior Health Classifications Advisor at the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare. And I work with Philippa in supporting the AIHW as the WHO Collaborating Centre for the Family of International Classifications in Australia. And that's a role that the AIHW has held since 1991. In this capacity, I'm also the Secretariat for the WHO Fixed Classification and Statistics Advisory Committee, the ICD branch, which is why I'm here to talk to you about the WHO Fixed Maintenance Platform, as this is the platform that I use primarily in this role. The maintenance platform, and Philippa has touched on this in her presentation earlier, it facilitates the proposal and review process for updating the ICD-11. I have put the web address on the screen there, and I believe that the slides will be made available to you after the presentation. The maintenance platform allows for the transparent updating of the ICD-11 using a standardized open process, and it ensures that the proposed updates are entered, reviewed, and considered before a decision is made to accept or reject them. This is the maintenance platform homepage. From here, you can access a number of resources that you might need. Under the Browse heading, put the mouse there. Under the Browse heading are links to the classifications and coding tools. Please note that these links are to unreleased work in progress versions of the classifications. Philippa before showed you the frozen versions, so don't get confused there. Under the proposals heading, are links to where you can propose changes to the reference classifications, and note that there are separate links to classifications. And next to that is a link to the translation platform. And this is where you would navigate to if your country was undertaking a translation or producing a translation of the ICD. But this presentation is mainly focusing on the links underneath the proposal heading, including ICD-11 and the ICD-11 reference guide. But before you can access many of these features, you must register an account with the platform. And this is where this arrow is pointing to. You would click on the register button. And it's also if you did have an account where you would log into once that was created. Creating an account is very easy. Just follow the instructions as written on the screen. You'll receive a verification email, which once applied, allows you to access those other features on the platform. So after logging in, let's have a quick look at adding a proposal. There are a lot of instructions to guide you when adding a proposal. These are highlighted in this orange box on the screen. So I'd like to show you briefly how the platform facilitates the proposal process for changes and updates to the classification. Here on the top left, I have searched using the search bar for restless leg, and then I've chosen a resulting entity from the foundation list, just here in the red square. In the middle, it shows whether other proposals have been attached to this entity and their current status. This one listed in particular is implemented, which means it's already actioned in the classification. Proposals can have different statuses as they are considered through the proposal process. You can click on the proposal to find out more. Can't do that today because we're not doing a live demo. Including when you want to find out more, you can find out when it was implemented, or if it was rejected, you can find out why. This is especially important if you want to make a proposal on this entity. If something has already been proposed and rejected and you want to propose something similar, it will tell you why it was rejected, and you might then have some ideas about how you might propose something different. So to attach a proposal to this entity, you would choose from one of the 5 create a new proposal options on the far right. But if you're unsure which type of proposal you want to make, you would select the info drop down and navigate to the user guide, which I'll show you on the next page. And here are the proposal types in more detail. The 4 main proposal types are content enhancement proposals. These include adding a definition to an entity, adding or deleting a synonym, narrower terms, or any other properties that you might want to add. Second type, I'm just going to skip over the adding a new child and deleting the current entity for just 1 second. I'm going to go down here to the proposed complex hierarchical change. These include more complex changes, such as adding a new block, changes to the structure, something that's a lot more complicated and is probably a major change. Now, the other 2, adding a new child and deleting a current entity, they are exactly as you see. You want to add something new to the classification, or you want to remove something from the classification, these are the 2 that you would add. If you're going to choose one of these 2, though, you must accompany your proposal with supporting documentation in the form of a rationale and peer-reviewed references. The last type of proposal is post-coordination proposal, for when you might want to add more detail to a STEM code, but it's not currently available. Back on the proposal page, you can also click this question mark if you would like more help in choosing the proposal. Most of the information that I was just in the user guide is also here. Here's an example of a correctly submitted proposal. Might look very detailed, but all of this information is relevant to this proposal. It also has a clear rationale and supporting references. I have also, as Philippa did, anonymized the submitter for this proposal, even though they did a very good job. After submission, the proposal is then processed by WHO team and goes through the network process. As an author, you'd receive notifications when your proposal progresses through the system. That is a somewhat lengthy process. I don't really have time to explain that to you today, but I'm happy to talk you through it afterwards if you want to get in contact. We'll return now to another feature of the maintenance platform, which is the search function. This can be used to find specific proposals using the proposal's unique identifier. And it's a little bit hard to see here, but I have put an arrow. This is the unique identifier here. It has a hashtag and then a 4-digit code, which is a mixture of numbers and letters. You could also do a text search for any proposal using a search term, such as nicotine. I'll show you an example of that in the next slide. You could also type in an author's name. There's also a number of filters that you can apply to narrow your search, such as by status, proposal type, or even sorting by date. I think you can see here that the search page is extremely flexible. So in this example on this page, I've added in a search term for nicotine. At the bottom of the screen, it has returned, there were a lot more proposals than this, but for the sake of a screenshot, I could only add a couple. You can see it's brought back many proposals with the word nicotine. That's either been in the entity name or it's been in the rationale. And this was just an example. Again, I've anonymized who has submitted the proposal, but you can see that these ones have brought back at the top the implemented ones. If I'd scroll down a little bit more, there probably would have been some that are currently being processed through the system. This is a very brief overview of the maintenance platform. I strongly encourage you to go and have a look at the platform, create an account if you haven't already, and familiarize yourself with how the platform works and where things are. The website has some training videos that you can refer to for more information, as well as the user guides that I referred to earlier. On this page are links to all of those things, so I encourage you to go have a look at those afterwards. Thank you for your attention. That concludes my presentation. Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you so much for that, Brooke. So we've talked about the coding tool, the browser, and how the coding will be maintained. So next, we're going to share with you the Doors tool, which some of you have already expressed interest in. And to do that, we have Kareed Elshokin, who is from the Classification Terminology and Standards Unit at WHO headquarters. So over to you, Kareed.
Thank you, Tracy. Good morning, everyone. Can you see presenters mode, present full screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. So I'm here now to this morning to introduce the DORIS tool, which is the digital open rule integrated cause of death selection. It is a tool that was designed for the automated selection of cause of death in a brief. As my colleagues already alluded earlier in their presentations, we have a lot of tools with ICD-11. And as part of the end-to-end solution for mortality reporting that Nina had mentioned, we have different tools and guidance documents. Here you can see on the left side and the right side end of the screen that can help and support the reporting of mortality using ICD-11. And I will briefly go over the first two because they were already mentioned in other presentations, and will show you a brief overview of the DORIS tool so that can be used for the selection of the underlying cause of death. First, we have the EMCCD, and in this instance, this is the international form of the medical certificate of cause of death that some of you may already be familiar with. It is the 2016s that we encourage countries to use in their systems to have comparable data and comparable input. And what we are working on now is to make it to standardize the input. So we are working on a list of specifications to standardize this input and and with some plausibility checks at the input side. This way we can improve interoperability between systems. So this comes from the input side. Then we get to the coding tool that Philippa mentioned earlier, and then gave you a bit of an overview on how to use it, how to search for the terms using the coding tool. it's important to get the cause of death, to get to the code we want using the cause of death mentioned on the death certificate. And as she already mentioned, we have a lot of languages, and the coding tool is used to get to the code which it gives you the best match. And it should always be the starting point when using ICD-11 to get to the index that is running behind. And after we get to the code and we have the coded data, we can use the DORIS tool. And as part of this tool was designed for, as I mentioned, the selection of the underlying cause of death automatically. It's part of the digital framework that WHO has been developing to support countries as they scale up their use of ICD-11 and implementation in the country. And it is open, it is free. I have few other specifications and features. It doesn't need any licensing or no fees required, as all our tools using ICD-11. It is easily integratable into existing software. It doesn't need any additional tools. Multilingual, as I mentioned, as all our tools are multilingual. And it is designed for long-term compatibility and continuous data exchange. So no matter how many versions of your system you create, it is easily adaptable. It is clinically up to date because it reads from ICD-11. And as we already mentioned previously, ICD-11 is clinically up to date, and we can constantly follow based on what Brooke mentioned, based on scientific updates, we can have the best available knowledge in ICD-11, and it's immediately mirrored in the DORIS in the back end because it has also an interface to the coding tool. It is, as all already mentioned, a transparent process, so you can find everything online, so that you want to get to the history of why this is now available and how the change was made. And the DORIS tool is available online and offline. So I will show you in the next few screenshots the web version and the offline version. It has a batch processing mode capabilities, which allows us to process a large volume of data in batches, so that some of you already have years of data in mortality. So this tool allows to batch process in one go all the data sets that you need, so that you can get to the underlying cause of death easily, and you can also produce your own statistics. And it can be integrated into existing mortality systems, reporting systems in your countries. So even if you have your own system and you want to keep using the same system, you don't need to change anything. You just integrate the DORIS tool into your own systems. And as I mentioned earlier, the DORIS has two versions. We have a web version, and this allows use for individual certificates. So if you want to run some scenarios, you want to train people on the selection of the underlying cause of death, or also it is mirroring the international form. So you can use this also as for training purposes. And we have also an offline tool, and this one allows the batch processing mode that I mentioned earlier. And all of the tools and options are available on the DORIS homepage. DORIS homepage is like any other tools homepage using ICD-11. It starts with icd.who.int, which is the ICD-11 homepage, then /DORIS tool. And the ANA code 3 that will be presented next with Doris Mafat has also a similar link with ANA code 3. So this can help you easily get to the web page if you know the ICD-11 homepage. After you get there, you can select either the web version, and this is a brief screenshot on the web version that is available, and where you can enter the information you have for an individual certificate, of course, and then you can enter the search for the cause of death, and these fields are linked to the coding tool, so you will get the codes immediately, and then you can compute and then get the underlying cause of death in the field that you see on the screen. And the offline version is what you see in the second screenshot here. You can download it from the DORIS homepage, and then on your computers you can install it and run it. And it's user friendly. It is easy and simple and quick to get to give you the underlying cause of death on your local computer. And this is what we call the batch processing mode. I briefly mentioned here, you can have a more in-depth session. We can have sessions to train on how to use the DORIS tool. But basically, if you have an Excel file, a CSV, or even the JSON format, these are all supported format in the DORIS tool. And one of our newest feature is it also supports free text. So if you have your death certificate with text-based death certificate, basically, the not coded certificates, you can use the free text mode, and then you can get the underlying cause of death out of that. And of course, the ICD-11 coded data sets can also be computed in the batch processing mode to get the underlying cause of death. The free text is the similar version, but is in the back end of the tool of the DORIS tool. It is also the same logic as the tool that Nenad alluded to earlier. It's using the Code Fusion. And as we develop the Code Fusion, you will be more familiar, but they are all using the same set of tools in the back end. And when you input the file in the DORIS tool and you compute, you will get the output. The output file will have the underlying cause of death at the end of the file, which is on the other end of the columns, because you will get the first, all the fields filled. And then when you run, you will get underlying cause of death. But not only this, you will get a report that says what was the sequence of rules that were used or steps. If some of you are familiar with the mortality coding rules, the report would give you details on the steps that were followed to get to the underlying cause of death. And this output file will be saved at the same space and in the same file as the input file you had on your local computers. So you can do everything without even having needing internet if you have everything installed on your local computer. And I'm very familiar with the time, so I'm going to be very brief in the next few slides, but just so that you have a bit of an idea, and Nenad mentioned also this earlier, we sit with countries, we start with the initial assessment, and we discuss the workflow, the data, their data, and he showed Maldives, and we have a lot of other examples. So in order to start the implementation, we need to have an implementation plan and timeline, specific timeline. Then we discuss how to integrate this tool in their own systems so that they get their the data, the most use out of our tools, all our tools, not only DORIS, but for this slide, I'm focusing on DORIS. Then there are training and piloting that we start, so that we train the users at first. Then the users would pilot this and test it in their own systems. And then we support this process throughout the whole implementation of DORIS. Then the tool is deployed after all of these steps. And after that, not only this, we have received so much good feedback and suggestions for improvement. So with every version, we will implement this, because this tool is being used by you and it is for you. So whatever you have some feedback or some suggestions on improvement of the tool, please feel free to reach out to us. And I just briefly here gave a screenshot of the ICD-11 homepage that I mentioned earlier. And if you want to know more about the mortality coding rules that I mentioned that are running behind the DORIS tool, you can go to the reference guide that I'm highlighting here, which has a mortality section that details, and the reference guide has everything related to ICD-11, also morbidity. But if you want to learn more about the mortality, you will go there. And if you want any support from our unit, please feel free to reach out on icd@who.int. And I also put my personal email here, so that if you need any support on ICD-11 implementation or DORIS deployment, please reach out to us. And with that, Tracy, I will end my presentation and back to you for, because I can see also Doris online, so that we can move on to the ANACOD 3. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for that, Corinne. So as mentioned, we will now move on to the last tool, which is ANACOD 3, or Analyzing Mortality and Causes of Death. And to do that, we have Doris Mahfad, who is from the Data Analytics and Delivery for Impact Division at WHO headquarters. So over to you, Doris.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Doris Mahfad. Sorry, when they confuse me, but I'm not the tool, I'm the person. Doris Mahfad is a statistician working in Department of Data Analytics in WHO headquarters. So I'm going to present ANACOD 3, which is a tool for analyzing mortality and causes of death data. It's actually a tool to drive decision-making and improve health. So a short presentation of 2 minutes, and then we move directly to a live demo. So the tool, since the tool is an analytical tool, we need to know what's the purpose of the tool. So it's more than just looking at statistics. In fact, mortality statistics are a mirror of population health, help to explain levels, trends, and differentials in mortality, identify health transition or emerging diseases and their impact, and identify diseases or conditions hindering progress in lifespan. Also, mortality statistics support public health decision-making to improve population health. You will get this presentation, so you can go through it into more detail. It is very important that good health policy should be informed by accurate, complete, and timely data. As you know, inaccurate data lead to inappropriate decisions and misuse of funds. And if they are not nationally representative, they can also mislead decisions, and all data do not reflect current situation. So some stories of how mortality data has been used. For example, on the left, you can see how you can measure the impact of smoking on lung cancer. So lung cancer keep increasing from 1950s to nearly 2000, when global tobacco control become a priority for WHO. Then most countries implement actions to control tobacco import or tobacco smoking, and you can see a decline then since the 2000. Also, the OECD on the right uses mortality data to estimate the mortality from avoidable causes. So this is the landing page of ANACOD 3. ANACOD 3 is a tool developed by WHO. You can see at the bottom the URL which you should be using to access the tool. The tool is actually available for anyone to use, and is on the WHO website. So some background on the development of ANACOD 3 tool. Why we call it ANACOD 3? Because ANACOD has been developed 10 years ago in 2011, and it was the first electronic tool freely available for data analysts to analyze mortality and in particular cause of death information. And it was to support countries in their data journey, providing them the lens to examine their data from various angles. The tool is very intuitive, built with a user-centered focus, easy onboarding, and trouble-free. So we call it version 3 because it is the third version of the tool. And you may be familiar with another tool called Anaconda, developed by a group of researchers. Although both tools perform a variety of analysis, there are differences which users should be made aware of. ANACOD 3 is unique and is capable of analyzing data coded to either ICD-10 or ICD-11, and is a WHO-supported tool in addition, and it's maintained by WHO. So some of the snapshots from ANACOD 3 analysis. So in this one, it shows really the sort of the profile of a country, the epidemiological profile, and help countries and help police decision makers in defining priorities. And you see in this graph that the green line shows the non-communicable diseases, which are the lifestyle diseases like cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, keep increasing across as people grow older. It's a green line shown in the chart here. And with ANACOD-free, you also know which diseases kill most people in your country. So that list of 20 leading causes of death will help countries to define priority interventions to improve population health. Mostly the ANACOD-free tool support users in analyzing the quality of the data, because data could be generated, but the quality is very important. If its quality is bad, then you would actually mislead your decision makers. So the tool also facilitates the production of national vital statistics reports. So the tool analyzes mortality levels, causes of death, and external causes of mortality. Any other results can be actually downloaded as Excel table and as a PNG file, which you can put into your presentation. So what countries benefit from using the tool is that their data skills get strengthened, the data quality are being assessed, and good quality data empower decision makers, and they obtain a comprehensive and critical review led to actions towards data improvement. And mortality data systems gain attention and be prioritized. So here are some useful links. Link to ANACOD-free tool. The link is there. Always use this link to access the most recent release version, because actually this tool is still being developed with more modules. So you might be led to another link when you click on it, but always use this link to get to the latest link. Any questions or help, write to mortality@who.int. I'm the one behind it, and we answer you with any questions. And we have a video there also registered in 2021 when we released the tool, which can help you to go through very detailed function of the tool. So I will now switch on to give you a live demo. Just a minute, sorry. I need to share the screen again. Okay, so I've put on the URL here. On the URL here, you can see I put the URL, but I've shown it in the PowerPoint. I will click on it now. And you go into the landing page, you arrive at the landing page of the tool itself. So you can see it's been updated on 24th of April, but we're still working on more, adding more functions. So there's two functions here. Either you upload your own data or you use a sample data. There's a few sample data here, but they're all ICD-10 data, which you can use, because as I mentioned, the tool can do either ICD-10 or ICD-11 coded data. So if you use the tool, you can go for the same functions, but I will show you how we will upload an ICD-11 dataset back to the tool. So first, I will show you how my file looks like. Just a minute. So here's the screenshot of the file I'm going to upload into the tool. So you have a country is a code here. That's a fake data set, so don't worry about which country I'm going to put it. There's 2 years of data, 2018, 2019. You put the population, the mortality, and that's the ICD-11 code. You can also put all the extension code as requested. And then you have the sex code, the total number of deaths, and all the columns show by different age groups. So actually, there are some extension codes here. Sorry, so slow here. Here it is one. You see, you keep the 2 stem codes, or you keep the extension code where there are. You don't separate the code from ICD-11. The entire code should be put into the file. So I upload the data here. In fact, you can download here the file format, which I've been using. For the sake of time, I will upload directly the data set, the one I've shown you. So it's a fake data set for ICD-11. So I click next at the bottom of my screen. It's national data for entire country. I put the ICD-11. Got my email address here. Uploads at the bottom of the screen. There it is. So the only thing is to get your file prepared very well. Once you upload the file, there's nothing for you to do. Everything is automated. So first you have check data. So step 1, it checks all the data that you have. So we uploaded 2 years of data. So you will check the population pyramid. This is all based on the data you uploaded. Check the total number of deaths, table 1.2. Check the distribution of your deaths. See is what you uploaded seems logical to you, the pattern. And you check the age-specific mortality rates, which is the total deaths divided by population multiplied by 100,000. And you check now the validity of ICD codes. So, for example, the data set has a code on the right, so 2662.Z. That's wrong, definitely. There's not a code there's not a code with 4 numerical numbers, you know. So all these codes are listed here. These are all errors. So you have a total of 419 deaths which are wrongly coded. It will not happen, hopefully, because if people use the tool that ICD-11 provides. But for the sake of this demo, I've purposely put in some invalid codes. So, and ICD codes which are inconsistent with age and sex. So you can have like a malignant neoplasm of other specified male genital organs in a female. There's one death, so that's definitely wrong. The same like polycystic ovary cancer, so the polycystic ovary in a male. So these are really things which you should go back and check in your data. And also we alert users on the table 1.6b on the right about diseases unlikely to cause death at certain ages. For example, malignant neoplasm of cervix, uteri, and specified in a girl of below 10 years may be right, but it may be wrong. So it's unlikely. So it's better you go back and check your death certificates. And we have then the codes, which is final check is codes not to be used for underlying cause of death. For example, we have the same case here, like malignant neoplasm metastasis in lung. And normally you should code the primary cancer, not the metastasis. So these are things which are being flagged out, and also similarly antepartum fetal death. And the fetal deaths shouldn't be put into the data set with causes of death. Stillbirths should be in a different registry. So then you move into analysis here. Analysis, you have mortality levels, which are the demographic analysis. So I will just show the one about completeness and demographic indicators, where you compare the total deaths that the countries have input compared to the UN estimated number of deaths. So it's really like comparing two sources. And here in this case, it's 100%. And there are more indicators based on the data provided, which you can compare with other sources. Here is comparing from UN estimated on national level comparisons based on recorded data. So this is a crude death rate. So we move directly into causes of death for the sake of time. So you have basic analysis here, 2019, 2018. So let's look into, for example, step 6 is the number of deaths according to the global burden of disease list. The data are then grouped automatically into 3 different categories: the communicable, maternal, parental, and interracial conditions, and then all the subcategories, and then into non-communicable diseases, which is malignant pleonasm, neuropsychiatric conditions, cardiovascular diseases, etc., and then into injuries. So these diseases are then, the proportions of each of these main causes are being calculated and showed in this chart. That's the chart which I showed you, for example, on the left, on the right, sorry, the red, sorry, is the communicable diseases and maternal and parental conditions. So it's a low-income country, in fact. Low-income, sorry. Yes, it's a low-income country, and you can see that there's a high proportion of communicable diseases in female. This is because of the maternal deaths, HIV and TB here. And you have the leading causes of death, which is lower respiratory infections, tuberculosis, and just HIV is there. And then the most important is the quality cause of death data. So we saw that even though the completeness was of 55, which means that the quality of cause of death is not that great. So if you look at the ill-defined causes of death, we found that in all the chapters, it counts for 45% of all deaths. The ill-defined is broader than just the chapter of ill-defined. It includes things like cardiac arrest, respiratory failure. So I will end my presentation here for the sake of time, but if you want any help or reference material, you can click here, reference material, you can get the guide, and you had also different languages here, English, Spanish, French, and Russian. So thank you very much for listening to me. Over to you, Tracy.
Thank you so much for that, Doris. So we have showcased quite a spectrum of tools to support you in terms of implementing ICD-11. So we have many more. Unfortunately, we have to be a bit selective. But we are always open to continuing the conversation with you in terms of developing the ICD-11 implementation plan and working with you so that you could actually set up these tools in your country and work with you to successfully implement ICD-11. And I'm a bit mindful of the time. We only have 2 minutes left, but I do really want to hear your feedback and any questions that you may have. So please feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand virtually or just type in your question via the chat box. I believe someone has unmuted, so if you have a question, please go ahead.
Hi everyone. We're from Samoa, but it's not really a question, but it's just a show of appreciation. That was a lot of information taken, and we appreciate this series to really, get on board with the use of ICD-11. So yeah, just show gratitude. Thank you very much to all the presenters today. Much appreciated.
Thank you so much for that, and agree. Thank you so much for all the presenters for squeezing all the information in such a short period of time. I know that was quite difficult. If there are no further comments or questions at this moment, so as mentioned, we're always open and looking forward to further discussing with you more and supporting you in terms of implementing ICD-11. And I will follow up with circulating the presentation also in terms of the recording. And we will have our last session of this series of introducing ICD-11 in the Pacific next month. So I will be sending further information soon. So please look out for that. And thank you once again for joining us today for this second session on ICD-11 tools, and hope you have a great day, evening, or depending on whichever time zone you are joining us in. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Tracy.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks, all.